This is the new Google Pixel 5a 5G, and the coverage of this device, which I've only just been able to open because I've been incredibly busy getting my wisdom teeth out the last week, is basically the same as the old one, but this time it's like kind of green a little bit. And I just think that that's really, really interesting to see people say like, okay, it's good, but it's really nothing that interesting. When Apple gets away with basically not changing anything ever, and no one bats an eyelash. And so today I want to talk about this phenomenon, whether or not it's real, how it relates to the 5a 5G, the Pixel 6, and also try to figure out how the heck Apple gets away with that every year. Let's do that. Subscribe. Here comes my unboxing of the Pixel 5a 5G. All right, that's basically it. We've got a charging brick, that's novel. We also have a USB-C cable. My goodness, I wish that Apple would just put USB-C on the iPhone. Oh my God. Anyway, today's rant is not about Lightning, but about how Google makes a phone that looks very similar to the other phone that Google made last year, the Pixel 4a 5G. Externally, this is very, very similar. And it's even similar to the normal 4a, which I also have. It's a little different. We have one more camera, a little larger display. The punch hole camera is definitely smaller, so it's good to see some incremental improvements there, but the devices are very similar. And this is an over a year old phone. This is a brand new phone. However, the thing that immediately came to mind when I started to see coverage of the 5a 5G and people saying, oh, well, it's not really anything different than the old phone. What sprang to mind was this. This is the quintessential, it's not any different from the old phone, the iPhone SE. Now, this is the type of phone that every single device manufacturer on the planet wishes they could make. Everyone would absolutely die to be able to make the iPhone SE. Why is that, you might ask? Well, the iPhone SE is, in almost every single way, a recycled phone. I mean, when you look at the Pixel 5a 5G, right, you think, okay, this is pretty much the same externally as the old phone. It even has the same SoC as the 4a 5G. So it's not really all that different, but then you gotta look at the iPhone SE, right? So the 5a 5G is the same as last year's phone, but the iPhone SE is the same as last year and the year before and the year before and the year before and the year before. 2017, that's when this phone is from. And even beyond that, if you look at the front profile, it's from 2014. And this is a phone that Apple manufactures right now. Let's just go through the list of things that this doesn't have. There's no Face ID. There's no OLED. There's no, curved display or thin bezels. This shouldn't be as popular as it is. And it also hasn't been changed in a year. So the formula for the iPhone SE was a really good one from a business standpoint. You basically take the exact same shell from a phone that came out at the time 3 years ago, and all you do is you put the modern processor in it. That's it. Job done. And Apple, this isn't the first time that Apple has done something like this. Right now, you can buy an iPhone XR. You can buy an iPhone 11. These are 2017, 2018, 2019 phones that have been completely unchanged. Even if you look at the iPhone SE and say, okay, well, at the very least, they did give it a flagship processor when it came out, the A13 chip. Even then, Apple is still selling stuff with an A12, a 2018 SoC that's coming up on 3 years old. So How do they get away with that? I'm curious, if you have a theory as to how Apple is able to pull this off, let me know in the comments below. I just think it's so interesting that when the iPhone SE came out, people said, this is a great phone. Obviously, it's not like people didn't realize that it was a recycled design. People still talked about that, but it was still a good phone, a great price point, flagship specs, or flagship processing in a $400 phone, but the coverage for the 5A, 5G has basically been, well, what's the point? And to that, I have to say, as much as I think it's kind of goofy that Apple can get away with basically not changing a phone for years and years and still selling it, I do think there is some truth to, if you're not going to change anything besides, it does make you wonder, if you're only going to be making tiny incremental changes to an only 1-year-old phone, why not just keep selling it? And I think the answer is because only Apple can do that. People aren't going out and buying a Pixel phone as an aspirational brand. That's just not the role that these phones fulfill. I even have the Pixel 5. Now, this came out right around the same time as the iPhone 12 series, and I've actually had this. Google sent it to me all along, and I literally forgot to make a video on this phone. I straight up didn't remember to make a video on this thing. And that's because, I don't know, there's just something about certain Android phones, I think specifically Pixels, that I guess they're just not as captivating. Now, hopefully this will change with the Pixel 6. I really hope that I get my hands on the Pixel 6 because that looks like a really big deal. Google's working on their own silicon. We've got the crazy new design, which I actually really like, by the way. But this phone didn't really have that. It was, even though this was a new design, you've got wireless charging through a metal back. That's really cool from a technological perspective. It's a really good phone. I actually did use it and test it, and I meant to review it, but I kind of just forgot because Pixel phones haven't been super duper memorable. And they've always been good. I've also got the Pixel 4 XL here. This is the one that had like the Google Soli thing where you could have like the gestures. Nobody really cared about that. It's got facial recognition, which is pretty accurate, although it works with your eyes closed, so maybe it's not the most secure. But this was another phone that is really cool. I got this in like October 2019, which is good because it's very Halloween color schemed here. But there's just something about Pixel phones where they're really solid, but they're not that exciting. And as such, I think that's why you end up getting a 5A 5G. Change the color slightly, make the battery a little bit bigger, call it a new name. It's a marketing tactic, is what that is. You don't have to change much, but you have to change enough that you can release it as a new phone because companies that aren't Apple just cannot get away with selling old tech for as long as Apple can. The fact that right now, people are going online and buying an iPhone 11, brand new from Apple, blows my mind. It's absolutely insane. And it's not just phones here. Like, look at the M1 Mac Mini. This is a fantastic computer, but this design is 10 years old. Apple is such a unique company that they don't have to do anything exciting at all apart from put their chip in the same thing that they've already had. The tooling costs to redesign a product are really, really high. I mean, even just manufacturing these new backs in a different color is an expense. But it's not an expense that Apple really has to worry about because they just make the same thing that they've been making, in this case since 2012. That's crazy. Even on more expensive devices like the MacBook Pro. This is the M1 MacBook Pro, but the 16-inch still falls under this umbrella. Apple only redesigns their laptops every 4 or 5 years. When you look back at the original MacBook Pro, which came out in 2006, it used essentially the same design but slightly tweaked as the outgoing PowerBook, which came out in 2003. So that design went from 2003 until 2008, and then that's when we got the unibody MacBook Pro. That lasted all the way until 2012, and the last unibody MacBook Pro, the 13-inch mid-2012 model, was sold all the way until 2016. 2016, people were still buying a design that came out in 2008. And then you had 2012 to 2016 with the iconic Retina generation, and now we've had this for the past 5 years. Now it has been tweaked a little bit, right? The keyboard was mercifully fixed, and the touch bar was added to the 2 Thunderbolt port model, but basically minor tweaks along the way with the same basic design. Other manufacturers can't get away with that. Except for actually, I guess, Dell with the XPS and Razer with the Blade. They've gotten away with having similar designs, but even those laptops have changed more radically and more frequently than Apple changes their designs. I feel bad, because if I were sitting at Google, what I've just done is make a good phone a little bit better. The Pixel 4a 5G was a good phone. This is now a little bit cheaper and a little bit better. That's a win. But the coverage of this phone is and always will be, well, it's boring. That is just the nature of this phone. It is a boring update. It's not that the iPhone SE is an objectively better phone than the Pixel 5a. I mean, this is $50 more expensive than this. You get OLED, a punch hole camera, more cameras, better cameras, you get 5G, and you get twice the storage, 128 gigabytes of storage versus 64. In many ways, you could say that this is the objectively better phone of the two. However, I guarantee that this year Apple will sell more of the already 1-year-old iPhone SE than Google will sell of the 5a 5G. And that is because Apple has, over the past like 20 or 30 years, accomplished what no other tech company could possibly do, and that is get all of their marketing and all of their hype for free for every single thing that they do. Apple literally can do no wrong at this point, and I kinda wish that they could, because the problem is Apple can get away with doing whatever they want, and people are gonna hate it, but at the end of the day, people are still going to buy their stuff. You know, Apple was like, hey, guess what? You don't get a headphone jack anymore, deal with it. And people were like, okay, I'll spend $160 on AirPods. Apple said, hey, guess what? You don't get a charger in the box anymore either. And people said, okay, I'll go spend $40 on a MagSafe charger or a whole bunch of accessories there. And even if I don't buy them from Apple, I'll buy them from another company that has licensed it from Apple so they get money anyway. Apple has absolutely played us all for fools, and we're just here drinking it up. And here's the worst part, folks. I'm saying all this stuff, I'm fully aware that Apple has played me for a fool, and yet I still bought an iPhone SE. I still bought an iPhone 12 mini and an iPhone 12 Pro Max. I've got an iPhone 11 Pro over there. I've got like 5 different Macs laying around. And yeah, you could say that it's because that's what my job is, but holy crap, Apple has stacked the deck, and I don't know how they've pulled it off, but honestly, it's a case study in marketing and brand reputation. Well, this was an interesting video. It basically ended up just being me ranting and using my marketing minor. So there you go. Hopefully this was an interesting discussion. I'm quite curious. Do you guys think the Pixel 5a 5G is better or worse than an iPhone SE? Let me know in the comments down below. And also let me know your theories on why Apple is able to do the stuff that they do. And with that, as usual, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Luke Miani, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.